Okay, so let's get going. It's just a minute or so after 1 by my clock. And so I'm Don Graves, and I'm the president of the Gila Native Plant Society. And Wendy Graves.
I'm Wendy Graves. I'm the treasurer of the Gila Native Plant Society and avid vegetable gardener.
And we also have with us Elroy Limmer. You can see him there, the bearded man.
Mm-hmm.
He past president of the Gila Native Plant Society. He's our Silver Creek Botanical Garden supervisor, manager, and he will be working with module 3, I think, about
Primarily.
pruning and those types of things.
Good.
And we have Betsy Kaido, you can see here. Say hi, Betsy.
Hi, I just need to tell you that I was just at the Will Lunch and Learn and my internet went out for a few minutes. So if it happens again, bye-bye. I hope it doesn't.
Thanks for warning us.
So Betsy is going to be, has module 2, and you're going to see lots and lots of videos of native plants from the Silver Creek Botanical Garden and some explanations. So, okay, so, and Jeff Boyd, sorry, I forgot Jeff Boyd. Jeff Boyd, you know him because you've already started your module 1, elements of landscape design, I believe. And I guess those are all of what we'll call our facilitators. So when you log in and you've got a question, a burning question about something that you saw in Jeff's presentation on landscape design, or you have a question about, we've got something going on in our yard, get on the discussion right there. There's a discussion for Jeff and the landscape design, and ask a question and put a photograph on there, or 2 or 3 or 5 photographs, and ask some very specific questions, because you're all different. You all have different needs. You've all got different ideas about landscaping and what you want to get out of it. So you're going to have to kind of make it, make the course kind of around your needs. So everyone's going to be a little bit different, but that is when, if we look back at the first course we did this summer, we had 36 participants then. I think the people, at least that we know of, that got a lot out of the course were on that discussion, and they were asking lots of questions and sending pictures and asking advice, because then everybody in the class can see that. All of us facilitators can see that, and it's a great way to get feedback. So.
Can I say something? There is a way to insert a photograph into a post on the discussion board. And there's also a way to attach a photograph on the discussion board. And if you manage to find the way to insert the photograph on the discussion board, it will display there for everybody to see. And that is preferable if you can figure that out. And if you have questions about that, you can certainly send me an email and I would be happy to walk you through it a little bit.
Yeah,
I have a question about a question that was posted in Module 1 discussion. It's actually a bunch of questions from Susan Campbell about a pond, installing a pond in her yard. And Don and Wendy, you just mentioned that you have a pond. I do not. I've never had a pond. Perhaps you guys can take a look at it.
Yeah, and we have, and I've been working with Susan on that back and forth. And I've answered that question. It's farther down in the discussion area, and also in extras, Jeff. Below your module, you'll see extras, and then there is Pond Building 101 or something like that. A little video that Wendy and I made about our pond, and that is what Susan is asking about. And
okay.
And she has been answered.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so all of you can go and look at that if you're interested in building a pond. We had no experience, we just did it and took photographs as we went. So Okay,
And
let's
it looks
turn it over.
gorgeous. It looks absolutely gorgeous. How can you possibly improve upon it? And this was your first time?
We need more plants. And Betsy has allowed us to come over and take two species of agave, and that they now sit on a berm above our pond. So,
They look like they've been there for 20 years already.
so
Good.
let's open this up to the rest of you folks. What questions or concerns or things can we help you with right now? It can be something about how to access a module, or it can be something specific about a landscaping idea.
Something you'd like to see addressed in the course?
Yeah, Susan, go ahead.
Wendy, you said that you were an avid vegetable gardener. And I came to Silver City and I was an avid vegetable gardener for a couple of years. And I guess I didn't take good enough care of the soil. I was putting in compost and I was putting in manure, but suddenly things just didn't want to grow. And so I kind of gave it up after that. I did try to amend the soil a little bit with bone meal and blood meal, but
You know, I'm going to say that we should probably start a separate discussion board for vegetable gardening, because there's lots of experience in this group. And I'm an avid vegetable gardener, but from the very northern tier of Minnesota. And so I really understand vegetable gardening up there, but I could use a lot of help down here. And I know that there are people in this course who could give us both some advice about that. So maybe I'll start a vegetable gardening discussion.
okay, that would be great.
Okay.
Susan,
I could
Susan,
chime-
I've been vegetable gardening in the Southwest for 20 years, and I grow thousands of pounds of food every year. So use me, call me, ask me. We can talk about any topic that you want.
Who is this?
Susan Campbell,
Oh, okay.
the plum girl.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we can talk about it separately. Put a question up on the discussion board and we'll start chatting about it.
Great.
Elroy, did you have a question or comment?
Oh, I had a comment. I've got a friend up in Moab, Utah, who's having troubles with her vegetable garden. And so she sent samples to the extension service and had the soil samples tested. And her potassium levels are just out of sight. So I don't know if anybody has that problem around here, but that was what she's dealing with up there, and some other salts that are pretty high.
Huh.
Yes,
So-
the buildup of salts is your #1 problem.
Right.
It's the
It-
thing. And that's the interesting intuition that the native people had about that. Because when you make a basin, not only does it catch the rainwater in it, but the salts migrate to the highest point. So the salts migrate out past your roots of your plants, which is kind of genius right there that they figured that out. Because even the rain here is salty. A little bit.
So we do have an extension service
Mhm.
person here in Silver City. And I'm struggling with her name right now.
Jessica Swap.
Jessica Swap. So if you look up the,
We could put her contact
Extension.
information.
yeah, we'll put the contact information. So you could probably find out how to send in a soil sample if you were curious to get the numbers. And okay, so let's get back to native plants. And so who's got a project or something that they would like to share with us, some ideas or some fears or anything?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for having me in Southern California, moving to New Mexico. This is a huge change. I'm in Hurley, And obviously you can hear my dogs, so I apologize for that. I'm looking at repurposing some fencing that I removed into raised planters because I'm a little concerned about the soil that is on my property. So is there any suggestions other than going to a nursery and being at their beck and call that I would run these raised beds for vegetables and native plants, like potting soil until I can get into the composting areas? I mean, just as a, I mean, I'm super, super new to this. Anybody?
I could
Sure.
say one thing. Go
This
ahead.
is Rick. I just got some really nice topsoil from Fowler Brothers here in Nimbus. That is soil that was dredged from the bottom of Bear Canyon Lake, and it's very sandy compared to the soil we have here. But if you're building raised beds, it's probably a pretty good thing to have be part of that.
Okay, so topsoil all together, I don't need to, because I know in the module, it was talking about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. I'm thinking that the topsoil would have all the nutrients needed to start off.
No, I would definitely add other things to it, but it's a fairly inexpensive as soil goes compared to buying bags of soil.
Okay.
You definitely would want to mix it with some
And
other things.
is there somewhere that I would need to go to make sure that I have the correct nutrients for my planting?
Can I interject here?
Sure.
I would think that growing the vegetables and growing the native plants were two very separate things.
Yes.
And I'm sort of thinking that Rick may be talking about soil that he's added for vegetable gardening.
Oh,
I'm going to use it in different quantities for different uses, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. One of the things that that we should keep in mind here is that the soils that we have, the native plants are adapted to those soils. So, you know, Betsy can tell you about stuff that's growing in her driveway that she would love to put somewhere else, but that is where it wants to be. And you can make a nice bed and give a nice soil and it will do nothing. So don't fight your soils too much. If you're growing vegetables, totally different story. But if your native plants they're in these soils, walk out. You've all that live here, I'm sure, that taken a little hike at Nahila and look at what's growing out of rock. And you think, you know, you couldn't take a pick and get through it, but there it is, native plants, beautiful flowers, etc. So don't fight that too much.
Yeah, I
know,
would say when you start looking at some of the videos in Module 2, some of them are at my house. And that's the reason why I was drawn to native plants, because I wasn't going to amend soil. I'm on a well, so I've very limited water. And I have had a lot of success with, once I get a few things going, native plants, and they like it, and they will volunteer all over the place. So I have not amended my soil at all.
thank you.
Go
So
ahead.
what I'm hearing is that I'm coming to my conclusion that obviously my raised beds needs to be vegetable garden on one, and then the native plants I can actually put into my property on the ground without trying to baby it because it would take off. Another question I have when I go there, I've been told by neighbors what I have is called Chinese elm, and they are everywhere.
Yes.
What can you tell me about these little critters here? that
Well, Elroy, why don't you give us a little lesson on it's probably the Siberian elm more.
they're Siberian elms?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Elroy.
Siberian elms are a bane to the whole US, I think. are a quick growing tree, fast growing, you know. People plant them because they grow fast, but they create all kinds of problems for us. Especially they seed so much and they come up everywhere, and the botanical garden has had, Betsy can attest to this more than anybody. She's the greatest elm puller in the country, I think. She gets out there with her pliers and gets them out of the ground. But it's a real problem around here. And if you can eliminate them because they are just, well, they take over everything. And they're not native, but they're a quick growing tree, and they can withstand just about any conditions. And we've got them all the way around the botanical garden, and we're trying to eliminate as many as we can, just so we don't have so much work trying to remove them all.
I
So,
see. So Siberian elms. Okay, so that isn't a native. Yeah, because it lifted one side of the fencing that I literally had to remove 19. I thought they were pretty trees until the neighbors kind of ho-hummed and rolled their eyes. And I'm thinking, well, that's not very neighborly. And then they kind of told me that this is not what you'd want in your yard. But these they were trees. I mean, they were well over 20 feet.
You know,
those are
Cindy,
little ones.
another,
Oh,
yeah, those are
gosh.
babies. Another thing that to consider about the elms as well is that they harbor Fusarium and Verticillium wilt, which doesn't always kill them, but they harbor it. And in many cases in our yard where we have planted rose family plants near the elm trees, they have succumbed to Verticillium wilt. Plants that you really want to have, like three-leaf sumac and evergreen sumac, all the sumacs, native roses, those things can not sometimes not thrive.
I see. Okay.
So
'Cause,
one of
I
okay,
have a new fence with 19 of those trees removed. So I'm looking at, and it's on the west side of my property. So when I'm out there, I've gone out there in the summer and it is hot out there. So I'm looking at some of the trees that I got from the booklet. I do have a question because I just recently got something from the Audubon, and they tell you the zones that you can bring these trees in. I wanted to get some feedback from everybody to find out how you guys feel about that. Because I was looking at, there's this small tree that's called purple leaf sand cherry. But then when I was watching the videos, there's a desert willow that I thought was more appropriate. But I'm open to any kind of feedback anyone can give me.
well, you certainly want to stick with those plants that grow in and around the Gila in our region. Don't bring in plants from somewhere else.
Yes.
That grow well somewhere else. Bring the ones that are native here. And the desert willow certainly is. It's a beautiful tree.
Elroy, do you know what the purple leaf sand cherry is?
No, I don't know anything about it, but one of the things, and Audubon is very aware of the problem because they just take the life zones and list them for everything that does well in say Albuquerque will be on the list for down here, and it really doesn't work that way. So you need to find out what our native plants are and go with those instead of trying to follow that Audubon list. It's
Okay, thank you.
yeah,
So,
Audubon here is
Stacy, I'm
very aware of that problem,
about
and
that, and I'm going to come to
they
you, I
don't
promise.
just
So one
encourage.
of the things that I'm going to be getting up on our website very soon, within the next week, I hope, is a guide, and it's all about, it was produced by Jack Carter back in 1991, and Jack Carter was former president of the Plant Society. He wrote the book Trees and Shrubs of New Mexico, and he wrote this beautiful, wonderful little, it was just a Xeroxed with a,
Velo bind.
yeah, but it has native trees, native shrubs, vines, succulents, etc., that are from right here with information on, their uses, their, why they're well adapted to our area, and if they're good for wildlife, etc.
Okay, one other thing is that in that module 2, the native plants for landscaping, there is a section on trees in there. And that module is already open. And if you scroll down and you find the section on trees, you can go and see what trees there are that grow well in the Silver Creek Botanical Garden also.
Well, and as I recall, Elroy had a little video about the desert willow. It is not his favorite native tree. I have two. I love them. And I think for Elroy, he just had it in such a wonderful place. It got really big. Where I have it, because I'm not watering it, in about 6 years, maybe it's 8 feet tall, and I love it.
Mhm.
So there's a difference of opinion on what you're going to love and what you're going to like, and it's going to depend on the specific conditions of where you put it.
I should have known better. I should have done a
Okay.
little more research about the plant.
Let's
It's a
go to
wonderful
Stacy.
tree. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the tree. I just have it in a location where I don't like it because of the fact that it's messy. It's dropping seeds or leaves or some flowers all of the time. It's just a messy tree. If I have it in the courtyard. If I had it someplace else, I would think it was wonderful, but
Yeah.
it's adds to a lot of maintenance. So therefore I should have done a little more research before I planted it. But by the time it was big enough to really start causing problems, I wasn't about to take it out, of course. But anyway.
I have another question.
Okay,
You
hold on,
mentioned-
hold on. Stacy, I promised Stacy.
Oh.
Stacy, go for it.
Thank you. Just a few months ago, we moved to Silver City, and we have an area that has a lot of desert landscaping around our house. But we've noticed that there is mistletoe in the trees, and I wanted to find out if there was a particular lawn service or something that could help us deal with that, and also give us some pointers on what we need to do in the yard because it's been neglected for a bit.
Okay, there's a lot of research on mistletoe.
Uh-huh.
If you start looking, but basically the trees that have mistletoe in them do better than if you try and remove it.
Oh,
Yeah,
So live with it.
not
okay.
not only that, but remember that the Phainopepla native bird, mistletoe is its #1 food source.
Sure.
And so it
Okay.
eats those seeds, and then the seeds are sticky, and then it poops onto other branches and it spreads it around. And we're thrilled to see mistletoe. All of our oak trees have mistletoe.
Oh,
We're so happy.
good to hear.
Yeah, and keep in mind that here in the Gila, we have 11 to 15 species of mistletoe, and they all have their own host that they like to grow on. They're all native.
I
So
I had heard that they damaged the tree, which
I
is what
have a mistletoe question.
Go
They're
ahead.
parasitic, but yeah.
Go ahead, mistletoe question.
In visiting Wilcox, I visited the Hassayampa River Preserve years ago, and they had a display that indicated that bluebirds get their blue from it. And I'm interested if that's true.
I would say definitely not.
I better go back because there's a lot more there than used to be.
Yeah.
There's a bird sanctuary there. I'll go ask them all about what they know now. Thank
They
you.
have birds that have feathers that are blue. It's not a blue pigment. It's the way the feathers are situated and the light playing on that. So it's really not a blue pigment. So,
But they're beautiful.
and the bluebirds got their pigment, I don't know, several million years ago. as
Okay.
part
Well,
of
the
their
other thing about the
evolutionary
Hassayampa River is if you drink it, you're a liar. So that's probably where that started.
development.
And the
Okay.
Hassayampa River is in Wickenburg, by the way,
Yes.
not Wilcox. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Great, thank you. Other questions? It's some folks that haven't had a chance yet. Susan?
I have had one great success in my landscaping, and unfortunately, it's gotten out of control. I bought a house that had just this giant weed patch in the back. And so over the course of several years, I got rid of the weeds and I dug out the roots of the weeds, and section by section, I put down landscape cloth and put down gravel. And I didn't have a budget, so I went out and just dug up some cholla and some yucca and got it all nicely planted out there. And for a couple of years, it looked terrific, but they're very happy and they're getting too big. And I've started trying to cut the cactus back, but I don't really know how to do it correctly. And probably I'll take a picture. Probably there are a couple of things out there that I should get rid of now.
Let me turn you over to Betsy, because Betsy's an expert at whacking off cactus pads.
But in a way, I know nothing. I just take my big clippers and cut at, do you have Opuntia, the prickly pear types?
I've got those, and then I have the cow tongue ones and cholla.
Yeah. Yeah, I just aim at lopping off at the base of a pad or many pads. And after I do a haircut on the ones that are in the botanical garden, they might look kind of sad for a while, but I've never had one die back. So I think you can be pretty aggressive with
Well,
them.
I have been pretty aggressive, but a couple of them are starting to look kind of scarred. And I don't know if it's because of the way I'm cutting them. That's what I've been doing. I've just been lopping off pads.
Yeah, well, maybe Elroy has some ideas, because Elroy is doing the pruning and maintenance module. Elroy, do you have anything to add?
Well, do your research before you plant. That's number one for anybody that hasn't planted. Cow tongue is one of those plants. I remember when I first moved here, or I shouldn't say when I first moved here, when Richard Felger first moved here, he and I were talking about cactus in general, and he said, don't plant cow tongue because it takes over everything. And so I've never done that, of course, but anyway,
So
that's
Susan, we've found that, coming from the Midwest, we knew nothing about cactus the cacti 2.5 years ago. And I am absolutely amazed at how fast they can grow. That you could take, because Betsy over at Silver Creek Botanical Garden will cut back the cacti, to fit the spot that they're in. And then I ask her if I can get some pads, and she says, yes, they're under the bridge. So I go and get them. And once you've cut them off and you let them sit for about 2 weeks to let that wound heal, you can just put that pad, halfway into the ground, and it'll, next year it'll start growing again. They're very, very forgiving. So, so I'm not exactly sure, Susan, what your scarring is about. I mean, I know as they get older, they, just like a lot of trees would, start to have some spots that you don't particularly care for, but I don't think you can hurt them by trimming them back.
I have one in the front of the house, and I cut it back by 50% at least twice a year. And then it grows again. And sometimes I'm really frustrated and I would just like to yank it out and put something else there. But I have thrashers who live under it, and I don't want to mess up the thrashers. So, well, I'll take a picture and show you what I'm talking about. It's just like, they just look like scars where I've cut away pads.
well, they are scars.
Yeah. But they look pretty bad.
Yeah, share the picture with us. That would be good.
Okay. The other question I have about cactus, and I'll stop talking about cactus. I think it's called
Cochineal.
cochineal. I've
Yeah.
always had it, and I've used the insecticidal soap. Right now, I just have this infestation of it that I can't get rid of. And I'm sure it will eventually kill them, won't it? So I don't know whether the only thing to do is wait until it's a little warmer and then try to blast it off with water.
Well,
That works wonderfully.
It does.
Blasting it off with water works very well. I've done that over at the garden. Well, the last couple of years, we've had quite a bit of it. And that's all I do is I just take the hose to it with, it's pretty,
One of the things about cochineal, of course, is it's an insect. And if you're seeing the white spider webby fibery stuff, but if you can just pull some off there and just squeeze it, and your finger will be bright red.
Right.
And used for millennia as a dye for yarn and such. And I'm a native dyer that likes to use native plants, native plant dyes, and it's choice. And it's difficult, the stuff that grows here, because there's so much of that fibery, webby stuff. But
it won't kill your cactus. We've had cochineal on our cactus here in Tucson for 20 years. I mean, it doesn't kill them. It's a natural thing that grows with them.
so why don't you try Elroy's idea, or your idea of spraying
yeah,
Okay.
just
with some
a
water.
volume of water will knock them off. And they
Let's
won't
move-
come back.
Let's move over to
Wendy.
Lloyd.
Wendy and
Lloyd.
Don, do you want to look in the chat? There's some other questions
Yeah.
and
good
comments that people have
Okay.
been entering in the chat, especially questions that I think would be nice if we could try to answer.
Okay, Lloyd, why don't you go
Mine.
ahead?
So we bought a house in September of 19, and we've got a lot of landscaping to do. There are lots of native plants on the property, but there were 2 ocotillo here that are just planted out kind of in the open. One's maybe 6 feet tall, the other's maybe 4 feet. We've been here in the spring, they've never bloomed. And they look, of course, in the winter, they look dead, like they'll never come back to life. But I'm wondering, one, if they can be moved very easily to somewhere. We have a wall around the house, and there's some really warm spots, and I'm wondering if they would be better against a warm wall with more sunlight. So that's kind of my question is, one, can they be moved, and are they, I know they're probably not native to this area. I know they are in Tucson and parts of Arizona, but how can we make those thrive better?
Can I just interject that Mary Barrett in the chat has also asked about Ocotillo, and she says, will it survive here and what are its requirements?
So let me just start and then we'll move around. Ocotillo is native. Where Silver City is probably just maybe a little too chilly for a lot of Ocotillo, but you see them around town. You go to City of Rock State Park and they're all over the place, okay? So they're certainly native. But
And if you have them growing, you're lucky. That's nice.
right.
Yeah.
However, I'll say what I think and then I'll shut up. I think moving it would be a mistake. I think it would probably die. And yes, if you could plant a small one and you had a nice sunny spot and a wall that stays warm, that is ideal for Ocotillo and Silver City. Okay, so other comments on Ocotillo?
Yeah, they do well if you can start them small. Find a small one is where you want to start. The big ones won't survive if you move them.
And then the Ocotillo does generally look dead during the winter, but it does green up beautifully on the first rain or whatever, puts out its little leaves very shortly after that and will bloom.
If you're thinking of having a rock area as a feature, largish rocks, that would be a good place to have it, would be around your Ocotillo. They kind of like that kind of heat from the winter, and that's a good place for lizards. And then you can tuck your little native, zinnias and whatever in around it, and you can make a nice feature out of that with some rocks and help it with a little bit of heat.
And they seem to grow some places where there doesn't seem to be any heat. I remember seeing one up on Schoolhouse Mountain. The only one up there, but it was a good sized one. I couldn't, when we found it, it was just amazing that it was up to probably 7,000 feet and it was doing fine.
One of the things to keep in mind is with these native plants, you order a native plant, or you buy a native plant at Ace Hardware or another area. Those might have come from Phoenix or Tucson, and so what I always try to recommend, if possible, an Ocotillo that is from stock, that's from right here in the Gila and nearby, is certainly going to do better than something that maybe came from Tucson. And just in general, but all of your native plants, as much as possible, if I can collect seeds and get something that I know grows right here, just maybe a mile away, is going to be better. That I think it'll be adapted to this climate, to these soils, as opposed to getting something that is grown in a nursery in Santa Fe or Tucson. Okay, go ahead, George.
I got 2 Ocotillos at different times. I got them from Desert Survivors in Tucson. The first one didn't make it. I went back and talked to the guy that has Desert Survivors, is really, really very knowledgeable. He's worth getting to know. The big thing with Ocotillo is, at least up in the boroughs where we have a lot of granite clay and stuff like that, is create a root environment that drains well, has lots of 1 to 2 inch rock in it, and don't overwater it. If anything, neglect it. They really do not do well if they have too much moisture. And mine looks dead up there. Oh, I don't know, better part of the year, particularly right now in our dry season. I haven't seen much activity from it, but as soon as it rains on it, it's going to leaf out. And the other is they are very slow growing, in my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, George. There's another question here from Mary Barrett. I collected, sorry.
That was Tim.
Okay.
I'm
New to Silver City and have a bear patch where I'd like to use as a dog area. Any thoughts on artificial turf for grasses for this purpose?
That was from Tim.
Okay, sorry. So as far as, what about native grasses for a dog area?
Well, I think it's going to take a little time to get it established, but buffalo grass is pretty tough, and it doesn't grow tall, and I think it would work well, but it takes a little tender love and care to get it going. So I wouldn't put dogs on it until it was up and pretty well established. But other than that, I think it would work well.
Does it require much water?
No, not once it's established, it would do well without it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm from a climate where I can normally buy sod. I'm assuming I can't do that.
No, it's a bunch grass too. So therefore, and that's what you're going to get here, bunch grasses. And so, you couldn't put, we don't have any native grasses, I think, that aren't more of the bunchy type. So.
No, thanks.
So
I think, George, you have a comment on that?
Emily has her hand up. Is that saying, yeah.
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I just used the hand raise button over in the participants panel. But my question is, does anybody have a good sense of when to start putting milkweed seeds into the ground, or should I try to start them inside?
You know, can I say something? Because I have just been doing milkweeds like crazy, and I have learned a lot about it. They're very fussy. Does anyone else want to say something? But if not, because I've just been delving into them for about 4 months.
Go ahead.
Sounds like you're the expert.
Well, I don't know if I'm the expert, but I've been doing it. Milkweeds are, first of all, they need to cold stratify for a month. And so that would be wrapped in a paper towel in your refrigerator in a Ziploc bag, 1 month. Then they need to go out in the soil. They need a little bit of light to sprout. So it's a good idea to start them in a flat or something so that you can keep track of what's happening. Also, however, they don't transplant well. So, so there's a lot of things going on with them. And most importantly, they are extremely day length sensitive. So that if you, as I tried to do last fall, start them in the summer and cold stratify them and so that I could have them big this spring. No, if you try to grow them when the days are decreasing in length, they just die, as mine all did when they're small. So they need to be cold stratified. They need to go into something like a peat pellet, or I use tall root trainers, flats that are about 8 inches tall for the tuberosa and the speciosa that get pretty big. And also I have some antelope asperula. So they're in root trainers from the very start, but you can also use toilet paper tubes. That's the right length so that you can just put them right in the ground after cold stratify. It takes about 8 weeks from the time you plant them after you cold stratify them to get them into the ground. So you're already looking at like 3 months before they're even little 4-inch size plants.
So Susan, what about just sowing those seeds, those milkweed seeds in the fall?
Yes.
Where you would like them to grow. They'll naturally cold stratify.
Yes, I've been doing that since 2018. And so far have no plants from doing that in our yard. That's why this year I was like, okay, I'm going to start trying to actually grow them, because I have planted literally thousands of milkweed seeds in my yard in that way every fall that I've collected from all over, anywhere I could find them in Silver City and the Gila in my own yard, because I have some plants already growing, but they don't come up. I don't know. We had such a bad year this past year, no rain. I was blaming it on that. But in any case, I just decided to take the bull by the antelope horns, as they say, and plant some this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me, Elroy, what do you have to say?
I'm sorry. I thought you said Emily.
No, Emily, you go.
Go ahead, Emily.
I haven't experimented at all with milkweed seeds before, so this is great to be hearing up front. Maybe I won't waste as much time, but I did already try to plant some of the vining milkweed straight into some little planters here in the house without doing the cold stratifying first. So I'm going to have to walk that back and retry. Thanks,
I'm not sure, because they're all a little bit different. It could be that vine milkweed, I don't know. I haven't tried it. So it might be different.
The vine milkweed, we have it here.
Yeah.
And it's very, very easy to grow if you can, it grows by these underground rhizomes. So if you can get a piece of that that's planted, and we did that in the spring or summer, and boy, oh boy, it went 30 feet.
Yeah.
Wow. Emily, that's also the case with tuberosa for sure.
Yes.
Is that if you bought a gallon one from like Trish at Lone Mountain Natives and just took it out of the pot, you can make taproot cuttings of milkweed, and they grow really well. So you just take a couple of 2 inches off the taproot, and I don't know what you would have left, or if what you had left would grow, but you'd certainly have more than one plant. But I'm interested to hear what Elroy and Betsy have to say as well.
I really don't have much to say, but I know you can take the rhizomes and it grows quite well. I did that with one just down the side of the road, just down the street from me, and planted it in the yard, and it did well for 3 years, and then it died. But anyway, it did well for a while.
Yeah.
Well, I did know about the cold stratification. So last year, now it was a year ago, last fall, I put antelope horn seeds out in the late fall. And last year where I put the seeds, absolutely nothing came up, but I had 2 clumps, gorgeous clumps, about 50 yards east of where I wanted to be.
That's
And
a
they
big
were
rhizome.
over in a part of the yard that I do nothing. I never watered them. I didn't do anything. And there they were. So I think they're very particular about where they want to be. And if they figure out a nice place, they'll do just fine.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, Mary Barrett, sorry, I collected some tree yucca seeds and penstemon barbatus. Can I plant them directly into the ground under a tree that is irrigated? So as far as the yucca seeds go, you know, we should get you in touch with Ed Like. He's kind of our resident cactus yucca agave expert. And let me pose that question to him. But as far as the penstemons, I think they're pretty easy to grow. And we just sowed ours. Well, we bought some plants from Trish Hurley, Lone Mountain Natives, that did well. And you sow those in the fall again, and so they'll cold stratify. But the penstemons are pretty easy to grow, and the barbatus is the beautiful orange one that we see so commonly. And it grows in some places that you just wouldn't believe there was any soil there for them to grow in. So that's my take on. Anybody else on penstemons?
I've grown some and they seem to do really well. They're in a full sun area. I do water them during the summer.
They're a short-lived plant though. They don't live more than a few years. So
yeah,
you need to replant every once in a while.
Right, but at the same time, if you've got them and they're blooming and they're setting seed, and just let those seeds, shake them out in the fall, and so maybe your main plant will die, but new ones should be coming up. There's a
Okay, I am going to very quickly say Cindy Sanchez has asked about sources for native plants, and we will put a list of growers and their contact information up on the course very soon so that everybody can have that. And then Lloyd Parker has asked, when can we begin planting this spring? Also, is there a resource you would recommend for native plants? So the resource will get you that. Let's talk about planting in the spring.
Well,
one other question. I think Cindy was asking, she doesn't know where the botanical garden is.
Oh.
That was the second part of her.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, we will also get that information up online.
But very quickly, if you want to go there today, because it'd be a beautiful day to be at the Silver Creek Botanical Garden, just go out Route 180, out of town, and turn right on Virginia Street. There's a little bitty sign with a little arrow, a little hand pointing to the right.
And where she's coming from.
This is true.
She's coming from Hurley.
She's from
I'll be in New Mexico next week.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna make it a point to find the Silver Creek Botanicals.
Okay, it's the first street past
Virginia.
Yeah, it's on Virginia Street. It's the first street past
Little Walnut.
Little Walnut.
Okay, I know where that's at.
Yeah, so you just keep coming on 180. It's just 2 blocks from there, and you'll take a right, and it's down about 3 blocks.
Are there any restrictions due to the COVID? Are they open for us to walk through, or?
Yes, it's open. Of course, you should be wearing your mask, but other than that, yes, it's open.
I see.
Just don't bring 20 of your best friends.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Silver Creek Botanical Garden is, it's city property. And it is managed by us, the Gila Native Plant Society. And they, even during the tough COVID times, they didn't put ribbons around like they do some of the parks. So it's just open and just walk through at your leisure. So what about planting this spring? I guess it depends on what it is you want to plant.
And how much care you want to take of it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, around here, our springs are usually very dry. So they're going to require more water than they would if you plant in the fall, most falls at least. But anyway, yeah, that's the problem. We've had plant sales for years in the spring, and we get the plants in April, and then May is the hot and dry, and so therefore they're tough to keep alive if you're not on top of the situation all the time. The other thing I'd like to say is do your research before you plant. Kittens turn into tigers. And so, you know, it's a plant starts out small, but the next thing you know, it's big. And so know how big it's going to get before you ever plant it.
Let's back up a little bit about planting this spring. As Elroy said, that we've had an annual spring plant sale. We're no longer doing that. Our plant sales from now on will be in August or September. That is the best time to plant. Monsoon, let's hope there's monsoon, but you can get those plants established by fall and winter. But when you start planting things in the spring, then you are going to be watering them and caring for them more than you probably
Intensively.
want to. As May and June, where they're, you know, bright, beautiful, sunny skies every day, and it's 90 degrees or
And
more.
don't forget
And
the
there's no
wind.
moisture. So I would
wind.
just say, if you can hold off, we're hoping to have our August plant sale. We had to cancel because of COVID last year. And so stay tuned for that.
You know, maybe we should just point out that because we're recording, we will have the chat. And so we can post resources and we can post answers to questions that we have missed in the chat. So go ahead.
Okay, so I see Brenda, which fast-growing deciduous trees are recommended for southern and western exposures? And I guess the problem that I have with that is fast growing, and I don't know what fast growing means because it's pretty, I don't know, Elroy, what's fast growing?
Siberian elms.
Yes, Siberian elm. There you go. Okay, forget that. That was a joke. Bad joke.
Cottonwood. Cottonwood is fast growing.
Yeah.
But realize cottonwood is going to require moisture.
Yeah,
You know,
everything will really, but other than juniper pinyon, but they're not fast growing. Anything that's fast growing needs water.
Yeah.
And junipers will grow fast if they get water. You know, they'll grow quite rapidly if they get water. Most plants will do quite well. The first 18 to 20 years is when most of the trees put on their growth. So even some of the slow growing ones that they talk about all the time do their best growing until they're about 15 years of age, and then they start to slow down if they get the water.
So Brenda, if it has to be deciduous, I'm going to, as I said earlier, I'm going to try to get that booklet from Dr. Carter up on our website, and that will have pretty much everything you can imagine as far as deciduous trees, and you know, if they're fast growing or slow growing, where they need to be situated. Yeah, and one last thing, but as Elroy said, you know, we have a what is ours, Arizona cypress?
Yeah.
The Arizona cypress is not a deciduous tree, but it is a fast grower. So if
you can have a coniferous tree or an evergreen, that's a good one.
Okay, so Mary Barrett has her hand up.
I have a question about landscape. I have a question about landscape material. The house we bought had landscape material put down, and we have some established plants. I'm not sure what they are, but they just made like a little slit. So then when I removed the landscape material from around the plant, it was sort of attached almost to the roots, right, to kind of cut around it carefully. And, you know, it wasn't looking that great last summer, but I don't know if it's because, you know, why, whether it's because it was choked by the landscape material. So I wonder what you think about landscape fabric in general. And then since I had to remove it, will this bush kind of, and I put some, you know, nice soil and mulch and stuff around it, will it recover? Or yeah, so I just wondered what experience you've had with that. It was kind of a pre-existing condition with the property we bought, this landscape fabric.
Anything?
No, landscape fabric keeps the weeds from coming up in many places, but there's pros and cons to it, but I think the plant should do quite well with that there. I don't think it'll hurt anything. If I don't know what the plant is, of course, but normally when you say the roots were kind of attached to it, well, that's because that's where most of the roots like to grow, is close to the surface. That's where the water's going to be. That's where the nutrients are. And so therefore, you know, we have this idea that we were taught in grade school that the roots match the top of the tree, and that's far from the truth. But anyway, it's been one of those things that's been around forever. So most of those things, I don't think, if the air and water can percolate through there, I don't think it'll hurt anything. I would leave it.
Okay, there's one last thing here. Lloyd, Nice Neighbor, gave us hollyhock seed last fall. Of course, hollyhock is not native, so we'll. But I think hollyhocks
they're beautiful.
They're beautiful, and they grow well around here.
Mm-hmm. They do.
So are those okay just to direct seed? Like, I mean, that's kind of what he told me.
I bet.
Oh, yeah.
You think?
They're kind of weedy.
They self-sow in our yard around the vegetable area where there's less wind and more water. They just do their own thing. You can't stop them, and you can't grow them where you want them to grow, and you can't stop them from growing where they want to grow. Like Betsy's yard.
The Arizona cypress that you mentioned, is that the tall cylinder cypress, like an Italian cypress?
No.
Okay.
I'm just going to interject here before Don says whatever he's going to say. There are lots of questions here, and I'm going to tell you that we are going to build discussions on the course. We're going to look at this chat. We're going to share resources. We're going to share questions so that others who are more experienced can answer them. And if you have questions that you would have liked to have asked today, or you'd like some guidance on, you should send them in email also, and we can put them up on a chat board, or you can put them up on a chat board directly. So there's lots of opportunity to ask and answer questions here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so please use that. You can email us. However, that comes to us, but we're not. All of you are an expert at something, and all of you have some ideas. So that is the beauty of the online format, is that it's like sitting in a classroom with 30 people and you have a discussion. Everybody can hear it. Everybody can chime in. That's what we are doing online.
On the discussion board.
You should use that discussion, and you can make your own discussions. Just play with a little bit. We have some discussions already set up, like there was one for introductions, and Jeff has one for elements of landscape design. We're going to be putting up some other discussions And then you can reply to other people and ask questions and show photographs and all that, because that, here we have 1 hour in which we're done. Our hour is up, but you've got a whole week to get those discussions up and ask some questions.
One other thing is there's a way to subscribe to a discussion. If you really want to fill your email inbox, you can subscribe to a discussion, and every time anybody makes a comment, you get an email telling you that there's been a comment.
One thing about hollyhocks, they're biennial. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Okay, so it's 2:02. George, you get the last word.
Okay, regarding the seeds of native plants, your sources, we are the best source for each other. So eventually, I would encourage everyone to save seeds, properly label them, and let everybody else know what you have. For the dog run, I would also suggest vine mesquite. It's a wonderful grass, very hardy, and it will spread on its own. For Arizona cypress, when they're very happy, they will grow to 65 feet high and 65 feet wide. So Wendy's suggestion, or whoever made the suggestion, know where you want to plant it, because it's got to be a long ways from anything else. And for propagating native seeds, if you will find the scientific name of the plant, it's not hard. There are many, many sources. And you go to Google and you just put in how to propagate and put in the scientific name, you will find white papers from universities and specialists, all kinds of stuff that'll tell you the do's and don'ts of propagating that particular plant. The challenge is that many of them are not written for the Southwest, but you can kind of glean through. Wonderful resource. Thank you for letting me take up the last few minutes here.
Thank you, George.
And George has a lot of experience with seed saving and a lot of grasses. And let's not forget grasses. So we're going to get some more resources up for you this week, and we'll meet again here at 1 o'clock. On Saturday, you've got a new module or so open.
Already?
Yep. So use that discussion board. And if you have some problems, if you have a problem, you're having trouble accessing something, then do send us an email.
Yeah, send us an email and we will troubleshoot for you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll see
you.
See you all online.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll email with Betsy because I'm not sure she's still here. Betsy, are you still here?
Betsy.
Okay, nope. Let's just go ahead and I'll